Original Hasbro Transformers can be very frustrating to fix, mainly because you have all those bad memories in your mind of when they broke. As you remember from my previous Transformers videos, I had a storied history with Transformers. I didn't have good luck with them, but I really liked them when I first got them. I really wanted to enjoy playing with them. And I did for a few years, and then unfortunately my main ones all broke, except for Jetfire. It was the Christmas of 1984, and I got Jetfire, Optimus Prime, and Soundwave. And so what we're going to do is repair my childhood Soundwave, who unfortunately lost his head.
Course back to Cybertron charted, space cruiser fueled and ready for departure. What are your orders, Megatron?
Aside from some general playware, I had 3 issues with my Soundwave. One was that his head had come off. His head was completely gone. It had broken off of its post. As you can see, I've partially disassembled my childhood Soundwave already. I've got him in pieces here. This is the neck piece that would have been on the back where the head would come up from. I'm trying to be gentle with it because I am not confident with Transformers, but that was a weak point for Soundwave. The second problem I had was I had a crack in the battery cover on his back, so I had to find a way to get another battery cover, and I'm going to go into that in a minute. And then thirdly was Buzzsaw, which is the cassette that Soundwave came with. These are not reparable when they break, and they have many fail points. One is the head, which my brother's, his head fell off. Mine, it was the foot. He does not have a foot anymore because of a broken joint. So there's no real way to fix that. You just have to replace these cassettes with ones that aren't broken. And so that's what I've done. So over here I have a Buzzsaw that is complete. It's an original G1. It's not a reissue. And he is now waiting for Soundwave to be reborn. So let's get started on this. The first thing you need to know when you're dealing with Soundwave or any G1 Transformer is what stage of G1 it was. And what I mean by that is, was it 1984 pre-rub or post-rub? Now pre-rub, you probably remember those stickers that you put your finger on them and they would heat up, and then it would tell you whether or not it was an Autobot or a Decepticon. Well, that's a rub sticker or rub sign. And if you have the first Transformers, they did not have rub signs. This is a pre-rub G1 1984 Soundwave. The reason I know that is because on the back, let's see if I can find it, on his battery cover, it said Takara Company Limited, made in Japan. I don't know if that's easy to see, but it has Japanese writing. So what I had to do was find a battery cover that matched that copyright stamp. So I searched online and found one. So that was a pretty easy fix. I now have an uncracked Takara battery cover. So keep that in mind. Next thing I had to do was find a equivalent G1 Soundwave that didn't have his head busted off. But I didn't want to cannibalize from a perfectly good one because then I'd just be throwing my money away. So patience is a virtue, and I eventually found one where, as you can see, the legs don't clip in anymore. There's no cassette door on him left. The kid had clearly broken it off. This is the perfect candidate to get the usable part off, which is, in this case, Soundwave's head. Everything else is just a mess. So let's get him apart and get this head onto the original G1 body. First thing we're going to do is tuck his head away so that it is safely stowed. I always try and move his head at the joint. I don't want to move it by grabbing the top of his head and creating that leverage that could snap off this revolving peg. Alright, so there are a few screws we have to deal with. That's one. You'll have to partially transform him to get to the other screws. The other screws are behind his shoulders. As you can see, the body's starting to separate and the limbs are starting to go everywhere. Okay, whoa! Alright, those were the springs for the door that is no longer there. So be careful when you're doing that, those springs don't go flying everywhere. Alright, now we have this out of the way, and I want to separate these pieces from my childhood one because my limbs are in better shape. So I'm going to take these and set these off to the side. And these are going to make great spares that will go to someone who needs different parts for their Soundwave. Alright, so now that I have this taken apart, the head just slides out from its mounting. So I'm going to gently raise the head up to clear it from the back. And then I'm just going to gently push from the opposite side at the bottom to get that head to come out. And you want to be careful because that plastic has probably dried significantly and gotten brittle. So take your time, don't force it. We're almost there. And there we are. That's an intact Soundwave head with the revolving peg. So now what we're going to do, keep in mind you have a curved side and a flat side. Now we pushed this out this way, so the flat side goes towards his back. So the flat side goes toward the battery cover. So what I need to do now is disassemble mine. Just give it some patience because some of these screws are fairly old. Alright, that's out. That's out. Okay, now as you can see, my assembly is still intact and it's not flying everywhere because the door is still in place. And we really don't want to mess that up. So I'm going to gently set that off to the side. And I'm going to install the new head, which is the old head. Alright. We need to put the limbs back on. So make sure that you know which limbs go on which side. In this case, for the legs, you test it by having this sticker going inside. So this will be the leg for this joint, and this will be the leg for this side. Notice that I have disassembled them in robot mode, which is going to make it a lot easier to put it back together. So I'm going to lay these pins right down into the body like this. Alright, so in order to get the arms back on, you want to make sure that the arm joints are twisted to the narrow side because these circular areas are going to hinge back into the body, like so. Alright, so now that those are set, if you want, you can actually curl them back around the back of the body like they would be in cassette mode or alt mode so that they stay in good shape. And then we'll set the leg joints in their proper positions, and then we will cap off and put the cover on the main torso. This might take a little bit of careful jockeying to get it in place, but don't force anything. Alright. Once that's on there, you can swing the arms back around and get everything staged up to push in the screws. I'm going to lay it down and try and get these screws put in place while keeping pressure on the toy. You don't ever want to over tighten. The moment you feel these screws tighten up, stop. You don't want to strip this toy, or any transformer for that matter, because they have so many fail points. You just really don't want to test fate. Now I'm going to look and test and see if the seam lines are coming together properly. Looks like they are. So I'm going to put the last screw in place. Looks like Soundwave is doing a push-up. don't like the way this seam has not really gone, so I'm going to pull this screw back out. See what's going on with it. Feels like the arm is jammed up. And that's not a good thing. So what we want to do is make sure that arm's not jammed. What that means is we might be taking this thing back apart, because you don't ever want to force. Okay, we're going to take this back apart because this arm is now jammed up, and you don't want to force anything inside a transformer. So let's take this back apart, and then we'll move on with the rest of the restoration.
Rumble, laser beak, ravage, prepare for battle.
Alright, we figured out what the problem was. The problem was that there is actually a notch on the back of this metal post. And you want to make sure that that little metal notch, that little metal tab, is facing the back of Soundwave. You don't want it oriented this way towards the front of the robot, or else you'll mess up the arm mechanism. We learn a lot of new things all the time at RetroBlasting, so this is very interesting to know. So turn that notch to the back, that way, and then set it into the housing. Alright, now that we have that done, we should be ready for final assembly. Alright, so what I'm going to do is reorient this. Alright, there's my arm. There's my arm. Come on. Okay. And that's going to be my right leg and my left leg. Alright, and now let's try reassembling him for a second time. Everything clipped in place. Everything looks pretty good. Okay, the moment I feel resistance at the end of the screw, I stop. I don't over torque. You can't go back from that if something happens. This is not an automobile. Alright, let's check our seam lines. Everything looks good. Okay, so now we take our uncracked new back piece, slot that on there. Let's give ourselves some feet so that he can stand up, and give him some hands. Alright, we can test those arms. Arms are working well. Make sure they're snapping back into place. Shoulder movement is good. Alright. Soundwave was always kind of a rickety transformer, but he is headless no more. And if we give him his little buddy here and his weapons, which he had two. He had this cannon, and then he had sort of a shoulder gun. He's repaired. So that is a G1 pre-rub Soundwave from Hasbro. Oh, I forgot one thing. Buzzsaw, which is the cassette bird, has two weapons. You want to make sure that you put those on there, because otherwise you have an incomplete birdie. That is the complete Soundwave set. And I think it came with a number of other missiles, which we have right here, so we'll just kind of scatter those over in the corner.